Hi, this is Bill Hartzer, and this is the Digital Marketing with Bill Hartzer podcast for Thursday, March 3rd, 2022. Make sure I get the day and the year right because everything is being a blur because so much of stuff going on. So I want to go ahead and get started. So this week had a couple things for this week. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first is about redirects, and if you do have any questions, feel free to pop in and answer. This is the first time this week that we're also live on Facebook as well. So on Facebook Live. So see my page, the B Hartzer page or Bill Hartzer and page. So forth. So the first topic for today is going to be redirecting links. The second will be what Namecheap has decided to do and my thoughts around that, and as well and talk about a little bit about a stolen domain case that we finally got resolved after about a year of working on it. So first off, redirected domains. So I'm going to use the example of what I did and so forth. So let's first think about the domain name itself. So I had a domain name a website of a client that in fact had their products and services. And they've been around, so let's say, for 20 years. And this company's been around for 20 years or so, maybe even more. And so what they had done years ago, let's say 10 years ago, was they had their main corporate site, but then also they had a site that they had actually built sort of microsites. So let's use the example of Hartzer.com. So we had Hartzer.com. And that's a corporate site. And then they had HartzerWebDesign.com, HartzerSEO.com, Hartzer PBC.com, and so forth. So they had these other, for every service that they had, say 5 to 10 services, they actually had these separate websites. And in that case, these were all, separate sites built out. They had, lots of pages. They were doing fairly well at the time. What they decided to do, let's say 5 years ago, was to take those live websites as separate services websites and basically combine all those websites into their main site. So let's use the example. They have Hartzer.com as the main site, and then they had a separate site, which was Hartzer Web Design. They said, okay, let's just get rid of Hartzer Web Design and let's just redirect all the pages to the homepage of Hartzer.com. That's what they did. They did this for, let's say, a dozen sites for all their services. So they had, the good part of this is that they made that decision to consolidate everything. So even though they had links and so forth, and these other websites were doing okay for their particular service, they weren't really, they didn't have the benefit of having this big, powerful site actually doing all the work. So what they ended up doing is they ended up, at that time, they ended up redirecting like Hartzer Web Design to the homepage of Hartzer.com. And so the people were redirected, the visitors were redirected. But it turns out that when you do that, when you take a website or a domain name, you redirect it to the homepage of your main site, it's seen as a SOT 404, even though there's a 301 redirect, it's seen as a SOT 404. So you don't really get the benefits of, you get the benefits of the traffic and the clicks, but you don't get the benefits separately. You don't get the benefits of, maybe the links, for the SEO value and the reputation and all that. That's not really passed on. So what I did was I didn't really, I had investigated this and for a while, and it turns out that I actually found these domains. The client never told me that they had these all these other websites. So I found these domains because looking at traffic, looking at and so forth, and it said, here's the site, Hartzer Web Design, and it's on the web design topic, but now they have hartzer.com/web design, and they redirected it to the homepage. Well, let's change that. So January 19th, I finally got the developer to change a redirect, hartzerwebdesign.com, and rather than pointing to the homepage, point it to the actual services page on the main site. So rather, redirect it rather than the homepage, rather than to the homepage, redirect to hartzer.com/web design. All of the links and all the topic and all the the topicness, if you will, if that's a word, all of that, the topic of the links, the former reputation of that domain being about web design. Now, instead of pointing that to the homepage, it's actually pointing to the interior page, which is about web design. Well, I think that matters because, that actually, I believe that the redirects are now seen. They're not seen as a soft 404 because they're not redirected to the homepage. But we're actually now seeing, it took from January 19th to February 26th, about a month, just less than a month, let's say, 3 weeks, to everything for Google to recalculate everything. And that ranking for, let's say, the web design keyword, which was targeted for that particular interior page, that went from ranking 36th, which was the highest I was able to get it before, is now ranking 8th and on the first page. And just because of that change. Now, we're not talking about an expired domain. We're not talking about, buying a competitor's website, buying some domain and trying to get the links to pass over. This actually was a domain that, was their site and was that company's website for a while. And they had changed, the logo and and everything, on the previous site, was and does point to their company. And so it was theirs. It was just a matter of not having the right redirects in place and not pointing to the right place. That move really did make a huge difference. It took about 3 weeks, wasn't really instantaneous or anything like that. It did. So anyway, so at this point, that is something that I think we can learn a lot from. I've learned a lot from. I've proven to myself that, okay, we don't want to redirect stuff to the homepage. We need to redirect it to the proper internal page. Okay, next topic for today. Let's change gears a little bit. So next topic is Namecheap. So Namecheap.com is a domain registrar. They also provide website hosting as well. They've made a decision since a lot of their developers, a lot of their employees are in Ukraine, that they don't. So they have decided that any their customers or accounts that are related to Russia or have a .ru or a few other Russian-related TLD domain extensions, they have asked all their customers to find another registrar, find another web host, and starting March 6th. They will, and I think they may have, forwarded it over. Now it's March 12th. Anyway, by that time, they need to find a new host, find a new company, and so forth. They have made that decision. They've also made a decision that if you have a domain, if you can get a free domain name if you create a website that is anti-Putin and so forth, and they will host it, and they will they will give you the free domain. That's a decision that they made. That and when it comes down to, I'm just using this as an example, but what I've had to do in previous, and regardless whether or not that's a great move, you think that's a great move or not a great move, that's not really the point here. The point is that they made that decision, and it's not really yes, it is related kind of, it is related to their business and Ukraine and so forth. But as somebody who has come out or has had to deal with online reputation management issues and clean up things in the past, what I recommend is, if at all possible, that you and your, especially the company, companies need to be kind of, should generally speaking, remain neutral and not take, any kind of sides at all. And that's kind of my opinion, because of the fact that I've had to clean up a lot of, negativity. And let's say a company, as a company, you come out and say, okay, well, I'm going to give a discount, 50% discount to everybody who likes to eat strawberry ice cream. And if you you get a 50% discount, a 100% discount if you, and free services and we stand by everybody who likes vanilla ice cream on a cone. But if you if you like something else, then a different flavor, then you don't need to do business with us. So that's kind of a weird example. But what I'm saying is that if the company makes those decisions, comes out and say that, well, obviously, you as a company, you are turning off people that may like, mint chocolate chip ice cream because, and they won't get the discount. They won't, they can't do business with you because they like something else. So regardless, you're turning off customers at that point. So if you remain neutral and there's not really any kind of, political statements or statements that got, whether you like this or that or whatever, as a company and as a policies, sure, you do have, as a business owner, you have a right to say that. But it's from the online reputation management standpoint, is that when you do make statements like this, you're going to have, because you made a decision like that, regardless whether or not it's great and it's fabulous, it's coming out and making a decision and making a statement. And when you do that, you're going to have, unfortunately, you're going to have people who are going to use that, whether if they don't like you as a company, or they just want to be, an online troll, they're going to, that it's just inviting comments and so forth, and maybe people doing other things, against your business that normally would not have happened if you had not come out with, statements. So sure, I mean, your company may, decide in one particular case that you want to support one particular, cause or charity or, political affiliation or something like that. When you do that, you just have to, be aware that there are going to be, ramifications, and, is it worth it to spend your employees' time to have to respond to the, the online trolls that eventually will come out, and you'll have to deal with those. So regardless, that's something that has hit me in a lot of different situations, and where I've had to come up and clean up a lot of situations like that. And because really that did not necessarily have to be done. Now, whether or not, I'm not going to get into whether or not even I agree with, Namecheap's decision or not. And, I'm going to remain neutral, because that's the best thing for me to do. However, keep in mind that just be aware, like I said, for online reputation management issues come up. It can be great for publicity, and in a lot of cases, and I praise that, and I say that that's great, and that's a great decision, and so forth. In other cases, it may not be. But again, for online reputation management, just when you are making the decision like that, just keep in mind of all the potential ramifications. So next topic, final topic for this week is actually related to stolen domain names, kind of related to Namecheap, because I have had customers come to us, dnprotect.com, and they've come to us and their domain has been stolen from a registrar and moved to Namecheap, and I've had to work with to find the great great folks over at Namecheap to get domains back to when they were stolen. So regardless, we have a situation where a domain name, and actually several domain names, were stolen around the same time for network solutions, and I believe it's probably from the same person doing it. I don't have all the client details and all the customer details, because only network solutions would have that. However, what I believe happened is that there was a data breach at some point years ago at Network Solutions, and that user IDs and passwords and so forth were shared on the dark web. What happened is that this domain name thief decided to use those details and see if they could get into any Network Solutions accounts. They actually ended up getting into some accounts, and they ended up basically transferring some domains out to other domain registrars. And one of them was patterns.com, and patterns.com, piracy.com, pearl.com, and a few others that started with the letter P were actually stolen just about the same time. So when an event happens like that, you kind of have your questions about, and they were transferred to another registrar. Let's talk about patterns. So patterns, as I was investigating some pearl.com and piracy.com, patterns.com came up because it was transferred at the same time to another registrar, and the same registrar, BizCN China. It turns out that I ended up contacting the owner of patterns.com, Cosmic Pattern Software, and telling them that their domain name was stolen. So they looked at their website was down. They didn't have access to the domain anymore, and so forth. So anyway, what happened was I worked with patterns.com, the owner, and he filed a police report. And so forth. And we had that information. We presented that to BizCN. They didn't really care, and they would not work with us or work with the owner to get the domain name back. So regardless, so we had to file a UDRP domain name dispute. That took some time. However, just this week we learned that the dispute was successful. Is that the fact that there were two findings. The one, that Cosmic Pattern Software had a website and they were using that domain name, and they were essentially had a common law trademark because they had been using it for years, 20 years or so, and been using that as one of their websites. And the second part of the findings was that the current registrant had obtained the domain name through fraudulent means. And that essentially says that they stole the domain name, and that's why it was being returned, ordered to be returned back to the original owner. So we normally, in the process of the stolen domain name, if you wake up and your domain is not in your account, check to see if it expired. That's why actually I recommend that you register your domain name for at least 5 years in advance. If you can do it for more than that, that's great. But basically, if it's stolen, then you can actually say that I had registered the domain for for a few years in advance, so it should not have been expired. It didn't expire, so you can make sure that that's checked off. The other thing is that get into the account, file a police report with your local authorities, and then also and contact your domain name registrar. Most cases they will work with you if the account is hacked and so forth, is transferred out. Some cases they, depending on who stole the domain. For example, if it was a former employee, if somebody who was a web developer, if you know the person, there's some domain registrars like GoDaddy that will not work with you, even if your former employee stole the domain, or somebody who is a web design firm that you worked with and so forth. If they stole the domain, GoDaddy and some other registrars will not work with you. So you have to take, so usually through DN Protect, we're able to work with the registrars, work with the current registrants, work with the situation and get everything resolved. If that's the case, that's great. And that's 90% of our cases, we're able to do that. Some of the, maybe a few percentage of the cases we have to go to UDRP and like patterns.com and file the UDRP. So at this point, that's what happened with that domain. And as far as legal expenses for patterns.com, we're looking about probably $10,000 in legal expenses to be able to cover the domain. That will be taken care of, by and so forth. But that's what we're looking at as far as to follow UDRP. We don't really want to have to file the UDRP domain dispute because that takes time and legal resources and so forth to prepare it and so forth. But regardless, we will get your domain back if it is stolen. So that said, I don't see any of the questions here. We are live on Facebook, finishing that up today, and expect being live on Facebook probably every Thursday around this time, around 1 p.m. Mountain Time. And if you do have any SEO questions, feel free to get in touch with me or see get on with our one of our Facebook lives. Anyway, so this has been the Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer. You get in touch with me at hartzer.com. My blog is billhartzer.com, and we can see you again next week. Thanks for joining us.